Academic Agent has declared October 20th to be Julius Evola Day. I feel that this is a good opportunity for me to try something new and express some deeper thoughts in an unknown format. I am new to this public expression of thoughts and philosophy, so I appreciate and encourage any helpful criticism and discussion regarding the topic. For all I know, I may be way off in everything I will be saying. If nothing else, this work could stand as an exercise in writing to my past and future self. Recently, the online right and libertarian circles have been abuzz with the question of masculinity and the role of man in society as a whole. I found myself confused as to why many libertarian personalities, heavily into the teachings of Jordan Peterson, found themselves on the opposing side of capital T truth. I would like to use my personal experiences as a millennial with the Jordan Peterson wave of the late 2010s and my newfound knowledge of Julius Evola's writings. I wish to convey a hopeful message on how younger generations of men, the Zoomers, should look to the teachings of tradition to orient themselves in an ever-increasingly confusing and degenerate world. I realize that I'm talking this way to a generation so far removed from anything authentic, I'm running the risk of sounding like a peddler of self-help books or a preacher telling you how to live. Make no mistake, this is only intended as a helping hand in directing yourself towards the greater truths that can be found in the traditions of old and how they may be applied to your own life. There are no answers for you here, only an ideal, a destination without a map. The year was 2015. I was a 22-year-old student at my local university, and I had recently gotten out of a relationship, one where the energy fizzles out like the flame of a candle, and you're left with a tiny sliver of translucent smoke. You spend weeks, a few months, just coexisting, not really living. And then one day, there's not even any smoke left to cry over. I was in a soul-searching mood. I had bounced from one relationship to another, on and off for a few years, without any purpose. I didn't enjoy the single life, and I couldn't seem to entirely shake the drive to be with someone for something. I did enjoy my studies. Computers were something I was always interested in, and studying computer science allowed me to express myself and create something with my own hands, even if it was only in the digital world. Despite this, I was still merely going through the motions. I was doing my degree because, well, it's what everyone did, right? I stumbled on some MIT course lectures as part of my schoolwork, which in turn led me to some very interesting lectures on personality by one Jordan B. Peterson. I was mesmerized by these videos. Playing video games with some random 6-hour lecture in the background didn't cut it anymore. For once, I was actually paying attention to something. It seemed like almost every single sentence contained some nugget of truth about life that someone just forgot to tell me when I was growing up. Had society in general forgotten to tell all of us young men about taking on responsibility? I quickly realized that I needed to make some changes and actually figure out what was important to me in life. I cleaned my room. I sorted myself out. I needed goals, and not just a short-term one. I went looking for a meaning behind my actions, an ideal to aspire to. I realized that I wanted a family, but I didn't yet understand why. Julius Evola is a difficult author to read, and an even harder one to understand. Through his studies and vast knowledge of ancient civilizations, he brings forward a way of thinking and perceiving the world that is alien to the modern mind. If this is your first encounter with Evola, I recommend that you turn elsewhere for greater understanding before continuing this essay. I have left links to other, better videos and teachings in the notes. In the early chapters of Revolt Against the Modern World, Evola writes on the divine power, roles, and virtues of kings in the world of tradition. It is my hope that as part of realizing ourselves as men, we can learn from these virtues and emulate the traditional kings in our own lives. On the divine fortune of kings, he states that certain peoples had the customs of killing their chiefs or kings when catastrophes occurred. Quote, in the Nordic racial stocks up to the time of the Goths, and notwithstanding the principle of royal sacredness, an inauspicious event was understood not so much as the absence of the mystical power of fortune abiding in the king, but rather as the consequence of something that the king as a mortal man had done, thus compromising the objective effectiveness of his power. Conversely, Evola asserts that a king that acts and understands virtue's behavior would be emboldened with a power of good fortune that seems mystical and magical to the modern mind. For those familiar with the works of Jordan B. Peterson or many other motivational personalities, this is not an uncommon phenomenon. The idea that once a clear and noble goal is set, the world appears to shift itself to align with our desires. But Evola does not end it there. In the third chapter of the same book, he expands that in addition to virtue, the king must center himself as the lord of justice around which others and even the world itself can revolve. He must be the rock on which an entire church can be built, a beacon anyone in his family can look to for advice or judgment, the firm and guiding hand of society. Here he quotes from the Rig Veda, remain steady and unwavering. Do not give in. Be strong like a mountain. Stay still like the sky and the mountains are unmoved, as unmoved is the world of living beings and this king of men. It is therefore not the world that aligns itself to fit your desires. The world and the people around you are pulled towards the virtue's gravitational center created by the man acting virtuously, acting like a king. This, in turn, presents opportunities and aid in his virtuous pursuit towards the good. If a man can impact the lives of those around him to such an extent merely by modeling the good, it is only natural to assume that man can destroy all around him by refusing to do so, allowing for both physical and moral entropy. In many online personalities, particularly in the libertarian sphere, I have seen a lack of respect for these ideas. A person can be a big fan of Peterson and his teachings and simultaneously fail to realize exactly why we should strive to act virtuously, and so they fail to retain this virtue in the long run. Having only learned the act of virtue and not the tradition of virtue, they fail to realize that actions taken by the individual do affect those around them. Thus, they slide deeper into degeneracy and further from the masculine ideal. Back in 2015, I absorbed everything Peterson said. I used all the tools he gave me to push forward. The world arranged itself to show only opportunities leading to my goals of a wife and children. I aimed for stable income and cultivated myself to be a good candidate for fatherhood. But I was lucky, for my goal just happened to be a virtuous one. Peterson had taught me techniques for generating a change in myself. But try as he might, he didn't teach me why the changes were important. For that, I had to look deeper into older wisdom. I found many answers in the Bible, despite not identifying as a Christian. Eventually, getting my hands on a copy of Revolt put into clarity so many of my questions with regards to why acting with virtue and realizing myself as a man in the eyes of my fiancée was important. If I were to act as the king of my future family, my priorities and goals had to stay on course, and my vices had to stay in check. It was as if I had come upon some old hiking trail laid down long ago by my ancestors. Beneath layers of decomposed leaves, wayward roots, and overgrown bushes was a foundation more stable than any I had ever stood on. Without realizing it, I was acting virtuously in my pursuit of a family. I was making the right choices. I was making the hard choices. To put it bluntly, cleaning my room did not win over my wife. My virtues, my potential, and my stability as a man and husband did. Cleaning your room does not make you a king, but it does give you space to build a kingdom. It is obviously not my wish that you or I should become kings in any physical sense, even if some of us do still live in ostensible monarchies. It is that you should seek out and understand the metaphysical and traditional mode of kingship, and in so doing aim to create a virtues community around yourself. After all, a king is nothing without his subjects. And so it is my wish that you should seek to become kings for the people around you. Strive to be the king of families as fathers. Strive to be the brother that siblings turn to in their time of need. Strive to be the king of your friend group and community that everyone looks to for justice. Justice may not come in our lifetime, but you have to set a good example. In order to become men and enact a true masculine mode of being, we must have the fortitude to act with virtue and justice. That cannot be found in modern patterns of thought. That cannot be found in the ashes of modernity. That cannot be found in psychology lectures from 2015. For that, you must look to tradition.